So you may be asking yourself, how do you find your passion and how do you pivot during the pandemic? Well, my next guest has been compared to Mr. Rogers and Shel Silverstein as a combination of the two, and he's going to walk us through step by step exactly how to do just that. Welcome to the next 24 hours, where I'm going to give you real information you can really use to transform your life and work one day at a time. I'll be your host, Curtis Zimmerman. My guest today is Zak Morgan, a Grammy-nominated children's musician. But forget everything you know about children's music, because he's been compared to Mr. Rogers and Shel Silverstein, and his interactive live performances are led with warmth, wordplay, laughter, and a positive message to help children encourage them to read, imagine, and believe in themselves. Today, he's going to be sharing with us how he followed his passion and pivoted during the pandemic. Enjoy. So excited to invite our next guest, a good friend of mine, an amazing performer. Let's welcome everyone, Zak Morgan, to the program. Zak, welcome to the next 24 hours.
Thank you, Curtis. It's good to be here. Always good to see you.
Absolutely, my friend. And I am the content that you have and what you have to share for teachers, for educators, for students, performance. I mean, so many different things to talk about. But I always like to start with how you end up on the podcast and how we end up knowing each other. So, it's interesting because you and I both went through something very traumatic and something that was very scary in the moment. And I remember people rolling out televisions where we were and sitting on the floor sobbing over what you and I were both witnessing. And that's really what started our deep friendship over the last 20 years. And I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about that, and then I can add a little something at the end as well if you'd like.
Yeah, well, you're referring to 9/11.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful morning. We were both at a showcase conference up near Chicago in Skokie, Illinois. And I just remember going to the venue that morning, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, and then getting in there, and you realized immediately something wasn't right. And you and I had been acquaintances. I always looked up to you because I was relatively new to the entertainment world and the education world. I'd been doing it for 2 years. I started in 1999, and you were a seasoned vet, but you were also so accessible, just like you are now. You're just a nice person, but obviously a professional too. So I liked being around you. I wanted to get to know you, and I wanted to learn from you. And then when that went down, you guys had flown up there, as I'm sure you remember. And then I was on the road with my sidekick at the time, Todd Kirby, and you and I. And Noah, who's sitting next to you right now, was an infant.
Yeah,
he was a newborn. So now, Noah, how old are you, buddy? 19?
I'm 20. I just turned 20.
20 years old. Amazing. So I guess that was 19 years ago. Going on, coming up on 20 years ago. And then remember, Curtis, we had to go out because you guys drove back to Cincinnati with us. The planes all air travel was stopped. So we went to a Target or a Walmart and had to pound on the door to see if they would open the store so we could get a car seat for Noah. Remember that?
Yeah,
it was so surreal. And that, going through that trauma together, and also being kindred spirits in the arts. It was, and we're kindred spirits. We're buddies. You're like a brother, and it's been that way from the get-go. But that was just, sometimes you meet in a terrible situation, and that when all the pretense, quickly what's really important comes to the surface when you're dealing with something traumatic. And you can correlate that even with what we're dealing with this year with COVID. Good things can come out of, there's always a silver lining that can be found.
Yes.
So our silver lining was our great friendship.
Absolutely agree. And I would just say that, over the last 7 months, having you as somebody to go and play golf with and talk about my problems with and what my family's going through, and you sharing where you are, and both of us, are our jam. The thing that we get excited about is being in front of large groups and getting feedback and having watching you so many times perform. I enjoy it every time, and having the kids scream and jump up and down, and it's all very interactive. And you're just such a master performer watching you do that. And I know that neither one of us have been able to, do that lately, but to be able to spend time with you and share kind of not only the emotional roller coaster, but also the financial burden and all the other things that come with that, and the way that we're both pivoting, and the way that we know the most important thing is to share our messaging and to get it to kids in some way, shape, or form, regardless if it's live or not live. And we're going to talk about some of that, but so important for everyone that's listening to, understand 9/11 was a very traumatic thing for both of us. And I remember being in the van with me and his sidekick and my wife and Noah, and listening to the radio the whole way about what was going on and not knowing. And, we were in a larger building, and we didn't know. We had to get out of there because we didn't know if other planes were coming. So there was a lot going on with all of that. And,
Well, I mean, my brother worked downtown in Chicago, and we didn't know if there were planes going to hit buildings where we were, in because we were in a large city. It was just there was that unknown for a couple of hours where you didn't know how many planes were still in the air. And if you think back, it was a very frightening day.
Absolutely,
it was it's surreal. The COVID thing has been a slow burn. That was so instant, and it didn't seem real. I mean, you just couldn't believe this was actually happening.
Shocking, and I just wanted to start there. I like to, just set the stage. And I know that you said that you were just 3 years, so it's 23 years ago when you started and you jumped off the cliff and said, this is my passion and this is what I want to do. And I would love to just start with anyone that's listening that has been trying to find their passion. Or, a lot of people have kind of slowed down their lives, went back to painting, went back to dance, went back to listening to the music they used to enjoy, old hobbies. I know that, sports cards and comic books and all that stuff's all blowing up because people are going back to those things that they really enjoyed when they were kids. And one of the questions I have for you is, in your life, there you are, and you say, you know what, I'm going to be a children's performer, and I'm going to do it in such a way that is really respectful of their brains, of their vocabulary, of their intelligence. And that's something I've always loved about your lyrics are, amazing. And I know people have called you the Shel Silverstein of the next generation. And so talk to me a little bit about the difficulty for anyone that's listening to say, let's see, I could go and be a lawyer. I could go and have a job that makes me rice. Or maybe I make not as much rice, or maybe twice as much, who knows, but I'm going to do what I feel I've been put on the planet to do. What was that like, and with your family, and how did that go over? Just kind of set the stage for us.
Well, I've always thought, and you mentioned being a lawyer. For some people, that is a passion, the
Absolutely.
law. And so I think you need to find the fit for you. I was a sales rep out of college, and a lot of my motivation, I think, in hindsight, and I probably knew it then too, was to get approval from my dad. I wanted to measure up. Even though that I enjoyed, I got to be in front of people, and I sort of was my own boss. I had a territory, so I liked that element of freedom. I've always liked working for myself, but it wasn't really my calling or my true passion. So when because I've always loved being on stage and acting and being silly and writing, creative writing. And so when I finally got the nerve up to give that a go, there was a lot of pushback from my dad, whose heart was in the right place. I mean, he's trying to protect his kid from starvation, but he initially was very concerned that I was making the wrong move. I was 29 years old, and I just really to my credit, to be honest with you, I because it wasn't easy to not follow the path that people you love and respect are trying to put you on. But for me, it was the right call, and I stuck with it. And a couple years in, thank goodness, I was a Grammy finalist, and suddenly it wasn't embarrassing for my dad anymore that I was a children's entertainer. So that took the pressure off. And but early on, I mean, I was not going to fail, because if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get in the black, so to speak. So 1 month early on, I did 58 concerts on Long Island in 30 days. At like $200 a show. It was, but it ended, you add that up and it ended up being real money, even though it almost killed me. And then I realized, okay, I can do this. And eventually your fee goes up and that sort of thing. But that's when I realized that, okay, if I work hard and I really apply myself, I can make this work. And I loved doing it. I always have loved kids. It put all the things I love. I get to write. I get to be my own boss. I get to work with kids and be silly and hopefully lift them up. So all the elements were there. It was just a natural fit for me right out of the gate. I did one show very early on, just an after school program, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just had a keyboard in front of me. And I quickly learned it's better to have a guitar because you can walk over here and over there if you start losing them. But what happened on that first show is there was a natural connection that happened. Even though I was an amateur as a performer, I was authentic and I genuinely love kids, and that is where the magic happens. So right out of the gate, I thought, oh, this is a fit, and then you just grow from there. I still, in some respects, feel like I'm just scratching the surface of learning how to be a professional entertainer. There's always more it's like golf. There's always improvement to make, but it's been a great journey and a ton of fun.
You said something that's so important just then, and that is you didn't set your show, set your music, and then do that for 22, 23 years. I've watched your show over the last 20 years, many times, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, because I had little kids, and boy, we had all of your CDs, and we sang all of your songs when we went to Myrtle Beach every summer on the way there and on the way back. All my kids know all your music, you know that. And but it kept changing. And it kept evolving, and it kept turning into something new, and you would introduce a new element to it. And I know even before the pandemic and since the pandemic, you're still doing that. And I think that's so important, that keeps you relevant and keeps it fresh for everyone involved. And that's something I think that people forget, that just because you're doing an art form or you're delivering to a certain audience, that you can't keep it fresh. And I go back to all of my corporate friends, and we talk about branding, and we talk about, even though you work for Coca-Cola, it doesn't matter. Coca-Cola still changes its brand promise, changes its brand messaging, surprise and delights in all different ways. And that's true for any real great brand that really succeeds. And I think that that's a formula that takes more work, and you have to continue to challenge yourself. And that's something I have my hats off to you for, because I've seen you do that over and over and over. And I'd love to, I know, Grammy-nominated artist and all the things I said in the intro, so impressive, your resume now. But what would you say as you were beginning your music and writing? How did you come to the place, or what would you say differentiates you from other, what they call children's artists? Because I don't really consider you a children's artist. You're more like an educator that uses this to infuse people's attention into something that broadens their horizons and their mindsets. And how did that come about? Can you tell us a little bit about, it had to be a conscious choice. I'm not going to talk about farting and pooping and, all these stupid things that kids laugh at, but there's really no staying power. You did the opposite of that. You challenged them with big words and metaphors and things that made them think.
Yeah. And I mean, I tried to make it funny too, but in a sophisticated way, or just respecting kids' intelligence, because you can make a child laugh with a fart sound, obviously, but that, as my dad always says, a little of that goes a long way.
Yes.
Steer clear of that. It's just like a crutch with comedy. If you're using a ton of profanity, it's not necessary if you've got really good material. And some of my favorite, like you mentioned, Shel Silverstein. I always love Roald Dahl. I love children's literature, even as an adult. Some of the best, like, young adult literature. My first job out of college, I was selling audiobooks, and I was selling unabridged children's and young adult books along with the adult stuff. And that's what I really loved. And it got me reacquainted with my favorite authors like Catherine Patterson and these great authors from when we were kids. And I just wanted to do something, like, if I'm going to write something, I want to make it art. I want to make it something beautiful and well thought out. So I wanted to make smart music for kids. I didn't need to make cool music for kids. I'm not some rock star for kids. I just wanted to do something that had some meat, that they could learn something and have a good time doing it and not even realize they're learning. And then I would try and challenge with big words. I had a great teacher when I was in the 6th grade who taught me the word Brobdingnagian, which means gigantic. And it's from Gulliver's Travels, the land of Brobdingnag. So I wrote a story about a Brobdingnagian bullfrog in the 6th grade. And that became the Brobdingnagian Banana Blues on my first record. So I just past childhood experiences and trying to come at it from what did I like when I was a kid? What inspired me when I wasn't being patronized, And then when I would challenge kids with these big words like Brobdingnagian, it's amazing. You could aim really high in terms of sophistication and challenging vocabulary, and they surprise you because okay. What else do you have for me? Even though I have always remembered my own childhood, where children are, if you think back and you're in the 2nd or 3rd grade, you knew a lot. Your brain has a lot going on. Kids are smart. So if you think back to your own childhood, that's been a sort of a secret for me, is I just think back and I remember, there was a lot going on in my head. But even when I try and challenge them, they still, I could challenge them more. So they're just so bright. And so that's always been my approach. And stuff that I want it to be fun for the adults too. But when I'm writing something, if I put a double entendre in a song, for instance, it can challenge them and it can go over their head. But if they get it, it's not going to take away any naivete. So I'm very careful to challenge them and preserve naivete at the same time. That's something I've always tried to do. And then make something that I like, that I think is good. I always try I'm going to make a record that you could sit next to an adult record in the music store and it would sound just as good. So I hire the best players I can find. And that's always been my approach. I have a great illustrator who's a world-renowned illustrator who is a Cincinnati treasure where you and I live.
And what is his name?
C.F. Payne, Chris Payne.
Yeah, people, you should look it up. His work is amazing, and he is on the cover of lots of Zak Morgan's materials, and we'll be putting links into all of that. And I think it'd be a disservice to just talk about it. So I'm going to take a minute now, and I'm actually going to give us a couple cuts of some of Zak Morgan's music. So sit back and relax and enjoy a little of the amazing music of Zak Morgan.
Once there was a little guy, 10 years old, 3 feet high. He wasn't like the other folks. He was the butt of lots of jokes. They had clever names for him, like Shorty, Shrimp, and Runt, shoring up a shame in him with bully coward stunts. Walking home and feeling glum, he could feel the teardrops come, sniffling and kicking stones, feeling small and all alone. Then he saw a butterfly flutter by a flower bed while he was having quite a cry. This is what the monarch said: "It's an amazing confusing world we're living in, but it's hard to see it through the tears you're crying. When pain comes by, stop giving in. Underneath the pain I see an angel flying up.
Wow, I told you that his stuff is amazing, and I highly recommend, if you know anyone that's a little shorter than you that needs some uplifting during these times, check out Zak Morgan's stuff. He has amazing content, and all of my kids have grown up listening to his music. So let's jump into another topic, and that is, so you have the music that you've produced, and people are able to buy CDs or go on YouTube and listen to, and all those things. But I also know you've done tens of thousands of live performances. And I know when I'm talking to you, you're on the road and you're doing, a residency at a school for 2 weeks where you come in and everybody writes music and you do a performance at the end and you record it and everybody's in the songs. And the work you do is incredible, as well as I know you've done so many performances at libraries all over the whole United States, touring, and you have your literacy show that you've been putting on for a long time. And I really want to talk to everyone a little bit about the science show, which is your new show. And I believe, is that the one that you did virtually, the science show?
It is. Well, I actually created it for live performance. And that, unlike my literacy show, which you alluded to earlier, it sort of developed over time. It kind of grew as I learned how to be a performer and learn how to do this professionally. So I was doing some cover songs mixed in with my own material. And then eventually I had written plenty of songs. But with the science show, I created the whole thing, mapped it out ahead of time. Before I launched the first show, I had it all mapped out. And I have a wonderful booking agent named Susan Lounsbury. It's called Lloyd Artists. And she said, Zach, and you talked earlier about, not just coasting, reinventing yourself, keep it continuing, not reinventing, but continuing to grow. It's easy. If you have something that works, it's easy to sort of coast, So having Susan say, Zach, you need another show just to have some, so you can go back to the same school the next year with new material. So I was never a science buff in school, but I thought, well, how could I do a science show that would connect with something I get excited about? Okay, well, maybe I do use science. How do I use science in my own life and in my own show? My ears, sound waves, and electricity. I need all those things to do my show. So then trying to wrap my head around electrons and protons and they just stuff that I hadn't really looked at since grade school or middle school. It was a challenge. It did not come easy. Like writing wordplay comes easier than wrapping my head around science. But I eventually got a hold of it, and I think I wrote some fun songs. So I launched it in West Virginia. I did something like a block of 16 shows. It was tons of fun. They went over really well for older kids. I normally go kindergarten through 3rd or 4th grade. Well, this was 3rd through 6th or 7th grade. And the kids really enjoyed it. I had sparks and electricity and doing experiments and then writing some songs that are aimed at a little higher age group. And it just went over really well. And it was just a whole new experience, a different demographic, really, because you're at a different place when you're in 5th and 6th grade than you were in the 2nd grade, for sure. But you're still a kid, and so tapping into that, but able to sort of frame the show slightly differently than you would with younger kids was a lot of fun. And then the pandemic hit, and so you wanted me to get into the virtual thing?
Absolutely. I want to hear all about it, because I want people to know that if you listen to this and you go check out Zak's stuff and you have kids that are doing virtual learning or they're going back into the schools, this is something that's available. And I really want people to know that we can't be everywhere even when the pandemic isn't here. And this is a way for people to enjoy and learn and get to spend time with you regardless of where they are on the whole globe. So again, oh no, the pandemic's here. I can't do live shows. I guess I'm done, is what a lot of people I know did. And then somebody like you says, no, I'm going to take this and I'm going to what?
I'm going to make lemonade or make a silver lining, and it ended up being a lot of fun. I wouldn't have made these virtual videos that I did. And I wanted to go at it. I didn't want to just sit with a guitar in front of the camera and sing a show. I wanted to take it, to try and make it a higher level, like something you could stick on for children's programming on television. So it's not really modeled exactly after Mr. Rogers, but it's got that. The aim is to have that kind of a vibe where it's authentic and we're learning something and it's fun. And it's shot well. I've got a really good videographer named Bob Mills in town. So he shot it. We made 6 music videos, and I mapped it out very carefully ahead of time so we could shoot it efficiently. And you end up shooting out of order, like, okay, we're going to be in this location again, so let's shoot that scene while we're here. You have to think all that through to do this without breaking the bank. And then, so I created those. I did a science one and a literacy one. They're both about 40 minutes long. And my goal with any of my shows in schools and with this is is to set the hook on a subject. I want kids to walk away from this saying, wow, science is fun. If that's all you learn is that science is a good time or reading books is a good time, you don't have to remember everything I told you about alliteration or similes or rhyme and elements of a story or electrons and protons. You just have to remember, this is cool stuff. This is interesting. This lights me up. This is fun. So really all my shows, because I'm not teaching your whole curriculum. I'm in there for a brief amount of time. So my goal is to just have them walk out of there associating that subject with fun. Because I never really did when I was younger. I didn't realize how much fun science is. So I've discovered that as I created the show, and I wanted to convey that.
And I think you did it brilliantly. And I also wanted to say, I know you said that you're not creating a whole curricula, but I do know also that with this, there's a study guide, there are tools for teachers. I know one of the things when I designed my virtual school assembly program, pivoting the same way you did, where I wanted to be able to still do life at performance level and make it interactive. We went in studio and shot it. All the things you're saying we did as well. But the key to success for me with it was, we're going to watch the video, and then we're not going to go, okay, now open to chapter 27 and pretend nothing happened. And that was always my biggest problem with doing school assemblies in general, was I always told the teachers, don't come to my school assembly and grade papers. This is not a prep period. If a child is engaged and hears something and smiles and they look over at you because they're so jacked up and you're grading papers and they miss the moment and they know you don't know that the light bulb went off, then I'm not coming, because then I wasted my time and you're doing a disservice. And I know that you feel the same way. We've had this conversation many times. So I just want to make sure everyone that's listening knows these programs are designed to start a conversation. And right now, the biggest thing we're missing is community with the teacher and the student. And these are all ways to talk about science in a fun way, but have real conversations, even if it's virtual, to build that bridge of communication. And that's something that you do so well. And you open up the door for the teacher to take those tools to get a deeper relationship with the kids. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I think it's important because especially teachers have a lot of pressure to teach to the test. And, it's some of the fun. I mean, we all know this. It's sort of an open secret. It's not as much fun to teach as it once was, because you don't have as much freedom and there's a ton of pressure to get certain scores on tests. And you might be in a school district where you do not have as much support from home as you do in another district, but you're measured the same exact way. It's just stressful. I mean, I hear stories about kids throwing up before they take these tests. I mean, it's not, it's the road to hell paved with good intentions in some ways. So something needs to change on that front. But I've worked, especially with the science program. I've worked with I've got a curriculum director friend in town who's up in Mason near you. And he steered me to a teacher who has done a ton of lesson plans and teacher guides. So she just finished. I hired her to help me make really good teacher guides and lesson plans for the kids it's cross curriculum and standards aligned, as the lingo goes. So it's I want to help. I want to make teachers' lives easier. I don't want to give them extra work to do. So my goal is to get the kids excited. So when they teach something else, the kids come at science with a different attitude. And there are lesson plans. There's definitely meat here where they can use these lesson plans to help facilitate what they're already doing. That's my goal.
You know, it's so funny to me because I'm listening to you now, and it's hard because I know the backstory. So I keep wanting to go back up, because everyone who's listening, you don't just land where Zak Morgan is. You don't just magically, oh, I want to be a performer, and then I'll do all these things, and I'll do all these shows. So I've watched Zak so many times over the years. We've done VIP days together. We've spent time together, me counseling you, you counseling me. And I know one of the things when now you talk about, I laid the show out and I had to think about this shot and that shot, all of that experience, in my opinion, is so much easier because you decided to move to Los Angeles like a crazy person and be there and do your own show and produce a whole series of videos and be on television. And you did a 2-3 year journey out to LA and rub elbows with movie stars and hung out at those parties. And now when you're here and you're talking and you're going over with me, yeah, so we did a shot and we did this shot and we're here. And, I have a great videographer. All of the experience from then makes what you're producing now seem easy.
Yeah, but it doesn't. You're so right. And I forget. Okay, well, how did I learn how to get comfortable in front of a camera? Well, you just have to do it a bunch. It's just hours. And you grow as you go. Going back to, like you mentioned, being in law or whatever your job is, I really do believe. I mean, we're just examples of people who love to be entertainers and perform and reach an audience and try and lift people up and be creative in that way. But there are ways. I mean, your passion, if you're watching this, might be something totally different. But find something that gets you as excited as Curtis and I get over about what we do, and that's the secret. And then, I mean, I'm probably not telling people something they don't already know, but that if you find something you love, it's fun to work hard at it.
Absolutely. Because I dipped our toe in it, tell us a little bit about your trip to LA and what that was about, and tell everyone the name of the video that you produced. And again, it's hard because when you say, yeah, and I hire world-class musicians and they come and play piece. I mean, we're talking about like people from, the Cincinnati Philharmonic, and we're talking about backup singers that were in the Beach Boys. And I mean, he's not kidding around when he's saying these things. So I just want to paint that picture a little bit deeper. Tell us about your trip to LA, what you went thinking, what you learned, and when you came back, as just an added bonus to this feature on Zak Morgan.
Oh, well, I always thought, okay, LA is the place where I'm going to launch this into something big. And then I got the Grammy nomination, and I thought, this is the time. I was 4 years into being a performer. I had momentum, and I thought, this is where it's at. It's going to be so fulfilling if I go out there and it blows up and I can be a big, famous children's television star. And man, in hindsight, I'm glad I did it. I learned a ton of stuff out there, but some of what I learned is what I don't want. And I started missing the forest for the trees a little bit, and I got cynical. And my ego started sneaking in there. I never lost focus of that I love children and that I want to lift them up. But there was a lot of, okay, I was liking that a little too much versus this. What is this really about? I mean, what is your real purpose here? If you can help a kid, and maybe if it's one child that you make a difference for, and they're going through a hard time. And I've gotten letters from adults now who saw me when they were a kid, who you don't realize you do an act of kindness for someone who might have had a traumatic experience, even if it's just giving them a CD and writing a note. I had a 25-year-old say I did that for him when he was 8 or 9 years old, and it got him through a horribly traumatic time in his life where there was abuse and all kinds of stuff. I would trade that one letter from him for 100 Grammy awards. I mean, but I didn't know that then. And then these are things you pick up as you go along. So now it's my ego's not as wrapped up in it. It's not about how many dollars I make or how many people know who I am. That's so not what it's about. And it's fun to sort of grow up and have that. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a 20-year revelation. It's a gradual thing, but it's a good place to be when you realize and start, and it can be comfortable. Like, this is what it's about. And I'm in a comfort zone and happy where I've landed and for what I've accomplished just in terms of, making a difference for some kids.
Wow. I mean, you said so much in that, and I've seen that over the years, that growth and everything that you bring to the stage. And, anyone that's listening right now, when you go to YouTube and you bring up Zak Morgan stuff and you watch him, I'm telling you right now, you can be caught off guard with his zany, crazy outfits and the way that he's willing to, he's the guy that, will jump in the pond and dive in and get the golf ball because somebody hit the golf ball. He's that guy when it comes to his art. And you have to always watch what he's doing and take your adult self out of it and put it in front of somebody who's 7. Put it in front of somebody who's 9. Put it in front of somebody who's 14. And depending on what his target is for that piece, you'll see them laugh. You'll see them go, this guy's crazy. And that's the thing that I so much appreciate about you is you don't care what it takes to reach that audience, what outfit you have to put on or hat or nose or whatever it takes. If that's going to drive home the lesson behind the love of science, the love of reading, the love of all things that music, of course, you're in. Go, sign me up. Let's go, Curtis. I'm the first one. And that's something that I see so many artists, as you were saying earlier, as it becomes more and more about them, they're afraid to look goofy or corny, and so they back off of all that, and they lose the magic. And that's something that I just have to applaud you for doing over and over.
Well, it's interesting because that has evolved where it's less now. A lot of it's like being comfortable enough in your skin where you can just be comfortable being silly. But like, there's so much less dressing funny or wearing hats than there used to be. It's me and a guitar and just this, I'm just connecting and that you can make the magic happen without all those other crutches, as if you can just be comfortable in your skin and not be afraid to be. And what I love is if I'm around 5th and 6th graders and you see them being too cool for school, in the beginning of the show. And if you can get by being not embarrassed I watched Fred Rogers do this. He'll go on Johnny Carson. I think it was Joan Rivers interviewed him. This is a great clip to look up. And when he walks out, people are snickering in the audience. And he sits down and he doesn't even notice it. He's so comfortable in his skin. And by the end, he had everyone right in the palm of his hand by simply being kind and authentic. He had her in tears. And he just it didn't faze him one bit that he wasn't trying, he didn't get scared or like, oh, they don't like me. He was so confident in a calm way. And when I watch that, I've tried to learn from that. So I'm not as over the top as I once was in my younger years. I mean, I still try and bring energy, and I'm still willing to be completely a goofball because that is my nature. I mean, I'm the same way on the golf course with my friends as I am on stage with the kids. I mean, maybe I'm telling different jokes, but just being yourself, I think, and that goes for any job too. Having people skills, just being authentic. People are attracted to authenticity, and
I would say, and it's more important than ever.
For sure. And well, that's one other silver lining with COVID, though, Curtis, is I think just like with 9/11, I'm like a lot of the other, the other meaningless stuff. I was going to say BS, but I can't say that. But a lot of that stuff, just out of necessity, it just goes away. We're just trying to get through this thing now. So some of the stuff that you worried about, whether it's, getting every hair on your head just right or worrying about a gray eyebrow if you're getting to be our age, it's, that stuff is so irrelevant. And times like this when, just because you have to focus on just putting one foot in front of the other during tough times. And that can be a silver lining. It can really give you some self-awareness of what's really important. And I think maybe we bring stuff that we've learned this year back into whatever career we are in.
I don't think there'll be any way not to be.
Don't you think people are I mean, I say this, but I'm thinking about how mean people can be on social media and stuff. But at the same time, I do think social media aside, I do think empathy is something that a lot of people are getting more in touch with, finding that again. One of the reasons I love being around kids is there is an innocence there and a kindness, a natural kindness that is good medicine for adults, to be around children and who don't miss the forest for the trees. They're not worried so much about being cool, quote unquote, because let's face it, that's an act for all of us. I mean, cool to me is just being your authentic self, whether you walk sideways or straight ahead.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. And I would just say something you said earlier, and that is, I don't use that stuff so much as a crutch anymore. And I would just say that I never saw you use any of that stuff as a crutch. I saw you use it as a tool. I see a lot of people use those things as a crutch, and that was the compliment that I wanted to give you was, you're able to use those as tools, and you didn't care, if it drove the message home. And some people do use all of the, I'm the same way, I can do the juggling and the fire eating and the magic and the Simon Says, and, I can do all that stuff.
But you don't have to.
Right. And there comes a time where you realize I might have something to say, that I don't need all of those things to deliver my message in an engaging way. And I know that's what you were saying, but also I think a great performer uses all of the things they've used, that they see have worked over the years to pull more people in. And
I think you can just use it more sparingly.
Right.
I'm not afraid to put on something silly. Don't get me wrong, but having that be an accent rather than carry a song. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just like a little sprinkling of color here, rather than the whole, the focus of a bit that I'm doing, or a vignette.
And I think there's something to be said for everyone that's listening. So I don't care if you're in education. I say all the time that every great master teacher I ever had, because, we moved 27 times when I was a kid. I was in special ed, and a lot of the special ed teachers were cut from a different cloth anyway, and they brought something different to the table because they wanted to be around kids with special needs. And so the really great master teachers I've ever had were amazing performers. And each day, 3 or 4 periods a day, the little audience would leave and they'd take a couple breaths, and the next little audience would come in and they'd be jacked up and ready to do another show and deliver their message to them in that way. And I think that's something that I just appreciate in you, because I've seen you and to do that consistently and not to have it be about you. And, a lot of people ask me when I was doing many shows like you were talking about, well, aren't you wiped out? And I'd be, no, I am so jacked up right now. I'm wiped out when I don't get to perform. And I get energy from that. I don't expand energy from doing that. And I've seen you do that over and over again I thought you were trying to put me in the grave a few times with, the way you're able to be at a conference and be engaging all day and do a showcase and then ready to go and enjoy an evening out together. So, it's just, and again, it just brings us all the way back to do what you are just put on the planet to do. Don't try to satisfy everyone in your life. Don't flush down the education and all the hard work you've put in to just go and, say I'm going to go and be whatever. But I also don't want anyone to miss all of the hours, all of the times that, you had blisters on your fingers from, playing guitar and learning that song, or watching you with the new program, the science program, and you bringing in new instruments, and you bringing in that giant ball that if you do it the wrong way, you do get electrocuted, by the way, Curtis. Okay, thanks for telling me after the demonstration, Mr. Zak Morgan. Appreciate you, brother.
You know what? Dave Kaplan told me one time, he said he had this great idea. Curtis is talking about this. It's called a Van de Graaff generator. You put your hand on it, and it spins a belt inside and generates all this static electricity. So if you are standing directly on the ground, the electricity will go right through you to the ground. But if you stand on something that will intercept that electricity, like a plastic stool, the electrons get stuck and your hair sticks straight up. So Kaplan says, here's what you do, Zach. You get a volunteer from the audience and you tell the kids, now she's going to put her hand on this thing. Now, occasionally I've heard that, if something goes terribly awry, their hair will stand straight up. So, and then, but that's not going to happen today, so as soon as you turn on, her hair goes straight. She doesn't know it, but the kids are seeing her hair stick straight in the air, but you frame it as, so long as this doesn't happen, we're good, which is exactly what's supposed to happen.
And it's funny because you're referring to Dave Kaplan. And so Dave Kaplan is another friend of ours of many years and another master performer and magician, and just a great guy, and kind of like that vaudevillian kind of feel, like he's, a busker, that kind of.
He's amazing. He's old school, like right out of you could stick him on stage with the Marx Brothers and he'd fit right in. He's a genius.
And a world-class juggler, and a physical comic.
Oh. He doesn't talk. It's like Teller from Penn and Teller. He barely says a word. It's just one calamity after another around the stage.
So that's who he's referring to. If you want to check him out, he's amazing as well. So, Zach,
but Curtis, real quick, going back to just the way you find what you love to do is very simple. If you get excited when you're doing it. You talk about all those blisters and everything. Those were fun blisters. I was doing something I like. I like playing the guitar. And as you improve, it's fun to improve, It's fun to create. I spent hours and hours making that science video, and I loved every minute of it. So that's the secret. Find something that it doesn't feel like work.
Absolutely.
If you can do that, you got it made.
Absolutely. And then do all the work.
Yeah, exactly. But it won't feel like work. I mean, you know what I mean? You're applying yourself, but it's no more work than if you like a sport and you work at getting better, but you're playing. So, I mean, creating all this stuff for me is play.
Well, you do it well, and you've impacted so many people, and I've seen a lot of those letters, and I've seen a lot of the kids that, Zach is in Cincinnati, where I live, and he does shows, and he's been at the Cincinnati Zoo for years and has certain venues that he visits every year for years and years, and it's amazing how my kids would come and we'd watch one, and then we'd hear about when to go to another one, and he has this group of kids, and then ultimately them bringing their own kids to watch Zach over the years. So those are the kinds of things that it just, keeps us coming back for more. It's amazing. So
that's a bittersweet moment when someone comes up and says, my daddy saw you when he was a little boy. Oh my God. I am old.
As long as you're still reaching your audience, it doesn't matter.
No, that's a beautiful thing, really. If you can do it for that long. The only downside is, there is a finish line in life.
Wow. Well, I just wanted to, thank you for being on the show and your friendship and sharing your stories and your music and your life with me and my family. And, one of the things about master performers is the ones that I've always resonated with were the ones that were always open to mentor, open to give time, open to, hey, can grab a cup of coffee and tell me how you did this one thing during your show. And they were the kinds of people that were always pushing out for free their content, their ideas, their strategy, their marketing plan to their competition. And happy to do it because they wanted to see other people succeed and reach more of whatever audience that is. And Zak Morgan is one of the most just authentic, loving, caring, giving, that kind of person. And that's why it's such an honor to have you on the program today, and why I'm so excited to share this information and with everyone about you and what you're giving. And if anyone's listening today and they'd like to find out more about what you do, how you do it, maybe they want to bring the virtual program to their school or their school district, can you tell us a little bit about how they would do that?
The simplest way, just go to zakmorgan.com, and you can spell Zak any which way you want. The official spelling is Z-A-K, Morgan. But whatever way you spell it, you'll get there. zakmorgan.com, and then you click contact, and you can find, and there are bars, there are different, headers that you can find all my information. And by the way, come right back at you in terms of someone who's generous with their skills and knowledge. I mean, you've been a mentor to me, and that goes both ways. And I think it's important for people to also be teachable and want to learn from people who have more experience than you do. That's what you've done for me. So I've tried to do the same.
Well, thank you, Zak. Always a pleasure, my friend. And thank you for being an amazing guest on the next 24 hours. And now, of course, it's time for my favorite part of this program. It's time for the 24-hour challenge. And very simple. What I want you to do is I want you to think about something that you've done, a pivot that you've made because of the pandemic. I want you to consider it. Hopefully, you can think of something positive. And then I want you to post it on social media. And I want you to see what other people say. I want you to see what kind of comments you get. But also, I want you to encourage other people to make comments on your post about things they've had to do differently and pivots they've made. Enjoy your week, and of course, keep living the dream.